real American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
G.I. Joe is the code name for America's daring, highly trained Special Mission Force. Its purpose? To defend human freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe!
G.I. Joe!
Solo board gaming night here, and today I'm going to be reviewing G.I. Joe, the deck building game. As always, let me give you an overhead view so you get an idea of how much space is used up on the table. Now, even though this is a deck building game, it actually kind of takes a lot of space. And the reason is when you're battling and you're using the transports with your G.I. Joes loading up on the transport, you actually are going to need space to be able to see and understand everything that's going on. You may be able to do it differently, but there's a lot going on during the missions, and you might need to be able to focus on the task at hand. With that said, let's talk about the rulebook really quick. I had a few issues with the rulebook, and I want to actually bring them to your attention because it may help you. First of all, the rulebook is very wordy and lengthy. There is a total of 23 pages worth of rulebook in G.I. Joe deck building game. However, if we look at the contents, we're going to see a list of all the contents in the game, okay? I have no problem with the Cobra complication and mission cards. You could kind of figure that out. However, over here where it says 117 player cards, they could have been a little bit more specific here, and I'm going to show you why. On the next page, they're going to give you a setup on how they want you to set the game up, all right? Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to flip over to the next page. They're going to even give you an illustration on how they expect the playfield to look like. However, there's one glaring omission that was not detailed at all whatsoever, not even a mention of it in the previous setup page, and it was the most important part of this whole setup, the main deck. Nowhere in the setup did they mention how to set up the main deck. Now, me being I already know how deck builders work, I was able to figure it out easily. However, if this would have been a first-time player to the deck building genre, this could have been such a turnoff to this genre because the frustration, I believe that the enjoyment of the game starts right with the rule book, and if the rule book gets you frustrated, that's going to just trickle down to the experience. And the fact that they didn't even mention which cards are included in the main deck is a glaring omission that I have no idea how it was overlooked. Now, if it was just that, I wouldn't have a problem, but they also kind of glanced over this mission section. It lets you know how to read the mission cards, and I'm going to focus here on the ongoing effects. It tells you just points ongoing effects here. Okay, nowhere else in the book do they explain anything in detail. They let you know at the start of turn and at the end of turn to do whatever effects are there. However, there's some cards that'll say, for example, put Baroness into play. Okay, if you defeat Baroness, but you didn't try to attempt to complete the mission card, at the end of phase or start of phase, does Baroness come back into play? The answer is no. It's just a one-time deal. They could have easily explained here that the only ongoing effects you have to think about or look at are the ones that specifically say start of turn, end of turn. The reason I say that is that me personally, I do not look at the mission cards. I want it to be a surprise, so I didn't even bother looking at them. It wasn't until several missions later that I realized, look, there's the start of turn, there's the end of turn. This could have been something that could have easily been remedied, but it wasn't, and it could really turn some players off, I believe, or at least cause them to have lots of questions. And another thing I wanted to point out, this one's even bigger. This was a huge error in the game, and it comes in the actual example on how to play around. Couldn't believe it. They made a huge mistake. Okay, and I'm going to point specifically to this skill right here. In the rulebook, it doesn't let you know what any iconography means. So right here, you'll just see a red square. Well, what does that red square mean? It's just saying red square +1 wild skill. I'm going to explain to you what that red square means. It means if you are on the red part of the threat meter, you get to activate that skill because there's green, yellow, and red. Okay? And it does make a slight quick mention of that here below. However, there's a huge error in how they did it. It's contradicting. Let's look at low light because that's what the card is. It says low light doesn't have the matching skill, but like every Joe, he can always add 1 wild skill to any mission. So he adds 1 more die. Since the threat marker is in the red on the threat meter, his special ability text does not apply. It should say it does apply. From there on, everything's just an error because of that. That could absolutely throw anyone off. Absolutely anyone off, especially this is meant to be the example, how you learn how to play the game. And I just really needed to bring it to your attention because if players get frustrated learning the game, that's going to affect their feeling of the game. So with that said, let's go on and just continue on with our review. So the rulebook was kind of a complete mess. It probably is one of the worst rulebooks I've read in a very, very long time. I can't believe it. Almost feels like no one proofread that rulebook before it went to print. I have no idea, but that's what happened. Thankfully, I was able to pull through, and as I kept playing the game and reading the cards, the pieces started falling in line, and I was able to figure out how to play. With that said, I'm going to go through a turn sequence just so you get an idea of how the game works. And then I'm going to let you know what my final thoughts on the game were. I did not like the solo variant of this game, mainly because although you're able to reserve 1 card per turn, you're not able to use the assists that you could use the way that you could use them if you play two-handed. And since playing two-handed is actually so simple, I personally prefer that method of play, and I'm actually going to show you what it looks like. At the start of the game, you're each going to draw 5 cards. And this is just going to be an example of what it would look like. Now, during the game or throughout the game, if on your draw, you draw a transport, that transport will immediately be placed in your hanger. And that hanger, you'll be able to grab one of those transports to be able to go on a mission. Okay? Then you just start looking at your Joes. Like, let's say I want to save this Joe for my next turn. What I'll do, I'll place this on the reserve. I'll play my deck of cards or my hand, whichever way I want to play it. And when I'm done, I discard the cards that I'm done with. And when I draw back up to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, once I have my full hand of 5 cards, I get to take that card from the reserves and place it in my hand. So you'll end up with a total of 6 cards whenever you use that reserve. I really like this because it really helps you take advantage of the assisting the G.I. Joes on their mission, and it feels great. So in my opinion, if you play solo, I would recommend playing two-handed. It works great and it's so much fun, gives you so many options. Whenever I chose to go on a mission, what I ended up doing is, whenever I chose the transport, I would put the Joes from one deck on one side and the Joes I wanted to add from the other deck on the other side. That way I could keep track of which Joes belong to which deck. Now that you know what the deck looks like when you're playing on your playfield, let's just go ahead and look at what a turn sequence would look like. At the start of the game, there's not going to be a mission in the middle of the table. In this first part of the game, you're going to have one round, and one round consists of everyone taking a turn. In this case, you're going to take a turn twice if you're playing two-handed, one for each hand that you're playing. Then, once you're done with the second turn, and you're able to keep track of it with this. When you're playing your first hand, you leave it here. When you're done playing your first hand, you flip it over, and the token will let you know at the end of this turn, it's going to be the end of round, and this is what you're going to do. Okay? So that's how I kept track of it. The first round of every game is going to be free for you to be able to recruit some cards to strengthen your deck. After that first round, you're going to be increasing the threat once at the end of every round. Sometimes if you fail a mission, the card will say increase the threat on the track. And sometimes if you complete a mission, it'll say decrease the threat on the track. Now, if you ever get to the yellow part of the track, apart from raising it once every round, you're also going to add what's called a Cobra Battalion to your main deck's lineup. Now, your main deck's lineup consists of 6 cards in which you could purchase during your recruit phase. If at any point you have to place a 6th Cobra Battalion on the lineup, you lose the game. You also lose the game if the threat marker goes all the way up to the top. During the start phase of the next round, what you're going to do is if there are no story cards available, you're going to add one. Now you're going to take a look at your story card, and right here, this is where your one-time and ongoing and starting effects would show up. In this case, it tells you to place a marker on the threat track three spaces above where its current location is. Okay, and it'll say if the marker reaches that before you're able to complete the story mission, you'll fail this mission. Now, there's a few ways to complete this mission, but before I get there, let me show you how a mission's set up. You're gonna place the mission on the table. There's gonna be a red box here with the number. What that means is that's gonna let you know how many complication cards you're gonna place right next to it. Whenever you're going to take on that mission, any amount of complication cards that are next to it get flipped over, you resolve whatever's stated on the text, and then you go on trying to complete your mission. So let's say you want to take this mission on. This number here on the bottom left lets you know how many successes you have to have in order to successfully complete this mission. In the middle, it lets you know which type of abilities are strongest against this mission. For example, you could use a Tech Joe or a Tracker Joe. So you use one or the other. And every Joe with that same ability gets to use that ability. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. First, you will go to your hangar, choose a transport that you'll be taking on the mission. In this case, I'm going to just use the starting transport, which is the Vamp. It lets you know on the upper left corner that 4 Joes can fit inside the Vamp. So what you do, you place the Vamp on the table. The person whose turn it is will then, the one that initiated the actual mission, will say, okay, I have a tracker. Just like the mission says, you could use a tech or a tracker. I'm going to place this Joe here, and this tracker, the number to the left of it is going to let you know how many dice you can roll for that Joe in particular. That Joe also has an ability box here, and if the statement on the text is true, then you'll be able to do whatever the text states. In this case, it says, if Stalker is the only Joe on this mission, +3 wild skill, That basically means a wild skill is you get to add another die, 3 in this case, as if it were whatever ability, in this case the tracker, that you're gonna go up against. So let's say one hand says I'm gonna put this a Joe there, and it has a 3 tracker ability on it. The other person, or in this case your other hand, could say, oh, you know what, I'll join you on this mission, and I have a 3 tracker as well. So now we're going to be able to roll 6 dice to be able to try to get 5 or more. Okay? Let's say you wanted to feel safe, and just in case you roll badly, you want to make sure that you'll add another Joe. However, this Joe doesn't have an ability down here. But any Joe that does not have an ability is used as 1 wild die, or just 1 extra die. Now I have 1, 2, 3 Joes. This transport only fits 4. I'm only able to place 1 more. Let's say the other hand says, okay, you know what? I will be placing this Joe. Now this Joe has abilities here, but none of these abilities are the same as the one that the story mission says. So what you could do is forfeit those abilities, still take the Joe on the mission, and that Joe will be just equal to 1 wild die. So you just get an extra die to roll. And remember, you could read their abilities down here, and any ability that holds true, whether or not it's of the same ability, will still be able to go through. So sometimes it'll be like if a leader is on, or a certain type of ability is on the same mission, you get to roll an additional wild die. Then you roll the die, and depending, the die has 6 faces. However, 3 are misses and 3 are successes, with one of them being a double success. In this case, you will grab 3, 6, 7, 8 dice. You grab a full handful of dice and you'll roll them, and you're going to try to roll at least 5 successes or more. Now there's something else that I'd like to bring to your attention. Let's say you came up a few successes short. What you could do, if you're the current player, you could just play your cards that give you extra abilities. In this case, 2 more wild skill. After you've rolled, you can roll 2 additional dice to see if you end up getting the amount that you're looking for. Or as long as another player, or in this case your other hand, has added 1 Joe to the mission, they can also use one of these mission abilities. And this means that they brought one of their Joes along for the mission, and they're able to use that ability on the card. You add up your successes, and if they total, in this case, 5 or more, the success is complete. In this case, you'll lower the threat track by 1, and each player will draw a card. Or let's say you failed the mission. You would increase the track once. You'll add 1 face-down complication to the next story mission. So every card's going to say something different. But let's say you would have failed this one. Okay, there's actually 2 tokens here. There's a success token and a failed token. If you would have succeeded, you place it on the succeeded section. If you would have failed it, it would go incomplete unless stated otherwise. Sometimes it says if it failed, it stays there. You would place it in the failed. You would add, in this case, any complication that was face up would be taken away, unless the card says that it has to stay. You would add whatever the card told you to add for the next story mission, apart from whatever the next story mission will do. Now, you don't draw a story card right away. You only add a story card in the beginning of your turn. So if it's going to be the beginning of your turn, you're going to look. If it's empty here, you'll add another story card. In this case, see, there's a red box with the 1, so I would grab an extra complication card because that's what that card had mentioned. and you would just go on from there. Now, after your mission is over, if you're not the current player, you discard any cards that you added to the mission. Any and every card that you used on the mission gets discarded. Also, the transport that you use gets discarded. However, if you're using the vamp always goes straight to your hanger. If you would have used a different vehicle, that vehicle would have been placed in your discard pile. And what that supposedly entails is, like, imagine if it's gone off for repairs, so you won't be able to use it again. And so you should reshuffle your deck whenever you're out of cards. And when you pull a transport in your hand, when it's time for you to draw, if you drew a transport, you would just immediately place the transport in the hanger. Now, after a mission, any Joes that you used will be used up. You cannot send them on another mission, because you can, if there are multiple missions, do it again. If you have enough Joes, you grab a transport, the vamp or whatever is available that you want to use. You place the vamp and you do it all over again. Okay, until you don't have any more Joes, or you don't want to go on missions anymore. Then, if you look on the upper left-hand corner here, you're going to see a number with the star. Those are your recruit points. Even though a Joe went on a mission, you're still able to use the recruit points that are printed in the star right here. Now, there is an exception. Let's say this Joe, this is a starter Joe. It says if this card was part of a successful mission, you may destroy it. So you could just destroy this one to thin the bad cards out of your deck. But if you destroy it, you won't be able to use the recruit points after you destroy it. You'll only be able to use the recruitment points for the cards that are still in your hand in play or on the table. Then with that, you go ahead, you purchase any card that's on the line of the main deck. You do any end of round, then you would discard your cards, draw another hand of 3. You would check if there's an end of round effect that goes on, and then it'll be the next player's turn. And you just keep doing that on and on and on until the game is over. Now, before I move on to my final thoughts, I do want to give you an example of what happened during my final battle. My final battle was so faithful to the original television series of the 80s. I went up against Cobra Commander and Destro. Cobra Commander had an ability that at the end of the round, he was going to be destroying the lineup of the main deck, which ended up turning my main deck into a time bomb that I had to kind of race against the time before it ran out. It felt really, really intense. I needed to get a total of 6 successes to destroy Cobra Commander. However, I only rolled 3 successes. I ended up playing the knowing is half the battle card, which is so epic. That ended up giving me the 3 extra successes that I needed to destroy Cobra Commander. Now, I'd like to add that there are 2 types of missions. There are what the game calls group missions, and in group missions, both of your hands, or if you're playing with multiple people, anyone around you can join in on the mission, the way I had showed you earlier. However, there's also what's called side missions. Now, side missions, when it doesn't have group missions next to it, you're the only one that can go on that mission. You do it the same way I showed you earlier. The difference is that you're the only one that could bring Joes along on the ride. So there is some randomness when it comes to rolling the dice. There's going to be a 50-50 chance of you rolling a miss or a hit. Now, usually I don't like that type of mechanic. However, there are plenty of ways to mitigate it using the cards available to you. Not only that, how I mentioned before, the missions, if you use the appropriate Joe with the appropriate ability, you're pretty much just raising your chances or improving your chances on getting a successful roll, because you get more dice to roll. I found that to be very, very enjoyable. This was a game that had me thinking much more than I really thought I was going to be thinking. It had me thinking, which cards should I end up recruiting from the lineup right here. There's also a card that at first I was like, this card kind of feels useless, but then I kind of figured out what the point of this card is, and it was the comms. When I first played my first game a couple days ago, I was like, well, this card kind of feels like there's no point to it. Actually, there is, because if there's a card in the lineup that's not covered by a Cobra Battalion, what you could do, you could discard any one of the cards you don't like from the lineup. Let's say I don't like this one, and you just add another card from the lineup. Now, keep in mind that your main deck is your timer. If that main deck runs out, that's another lose condition. However, this card became very valuable because I ended up getting some really, really useful. I want to add this. All right. When you place a mission on here, when there's a story, what the next mission is free information for you. So while you're going on this mission, you could say, okay, this is the mission coming next. Do I have a Joe that has, let's say in this case, a vehicle ability or a stealth ability? If not, maybe that's a good time to look at the lineup here. And when it comes to my recruiting phase, maybe it's going to be a good idea to get a Joe that'll be good for that job. So when the next player goes or your next hand goes and they go on that mission, you could use that Joe that you just recently recruited. By the way, when you recruit somebody from the main the lineup, it goes straight on top of your discard. It does not, I'm sorry, on top of your deck, not in your discard. So the next time you draw, it's actually going to go straight to your hand. I like that too, because it gives you options and strategies to be able to not only fight what's on task right now, but also what's coming up. It gives you it makes you feel like you're a captain in the squad, and you're like, all right, we're going to go out on this mission. We're going to have to be careful because on the next mission, we're going to need this or that or the other. And you're able to kind of prepare for what's coming up ahead. That, along with the cards that allow you to mitigate the dice that you roll and the abilities added onto the individual Joe's cards, really added a lot of depth to this game. Much more. I mean, it was shocking. I really did not expect it. I thought it was going to be a random fest of boredom, especially when I was reading that rule book. I was expecting the absolute worst. I was not expecting at all to have a good time. However, I was pleasantly surprised. The actual gameplay loop and the way the game plays out is really fun. Now, I do want to let you know that the game can last over an hour. It took me about an hour and a half-ish, around that ballpark right there, to complete the few games that I played. I played like 4 times already, and they all lasted about that much. I thought that the game did a really good job with the missions. There's a lot of surprises that you may or may not see coming. There's a reason why you separate them between the completed and the failed missions, and the game plays with that in ways that you probably won't expect. And it kind of threw a little joy in the game, like that sense of, ooh, what may happen next, and none of it never felt frustrating to me, and that is what I enjoyed. Even when I failed a mission, there was a time that I rolled terribly, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, I can't believe I had like the perfect team, and I lost it. It hurt. It was gut-wrenching. But it's like when you're going in battle in real life, I mean, you're not going to come back unscathed. There's going to be casualties. And that's what it felt like. It felt like you were sending out a squad on a mission and hoping for the best. You tried to lay out your plans as well as you could, and you were trying to do the best with your mitigation and your strategy to get a mission accomplished, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. And although there's the dice roll, the mitigation once again was enough to make the combat feel satisfying. I never was bored going on a mission. As a matter of fact, I kept looking forward to the next mission at all times. I really did like it. I enjoyed my time with G.I. Joe deck building game quite a lot. It may have a lot to do with the IP, but even if it wasn't G.I. Joe, I think I would have really, really enjoyed it either way. So in my opinion, if you like deck building games, you don't mind to play something with a little bit of randomness, but a lot of mitigation, give this a try. This is fairly unique. I've played several deck building games, but I want to say this is probably one of the most strategic deck building games I've ever played. There was a lot of strategy involved in this game, and it kept me like always thinking one or two steps ahead, and it never felt like because when you recruit a card, you place it on top of your deck, it always made you feel like you had control of the situation. You were able to plan ahead, and I really liked this. So it kind of balanced out the rolling the dice because you were able to plan ahead, and I thought that was a good balance. That was a good balance, and it really worked well with the theme. The theme of the game really, really worked well with this game. I was pleasantly surprised. So overall, I highly recommend this game. I think it's worth it. If the theme's not for you, or you're just sick of deck building, well, it might not be for you, and it might not be for everyone. But I liked it. I liked it more than the Transformers deck building game. I didn't like that one as much. This one was way better. And yes, the rulebook's quite the hurdle to have to go over. That's a huge obstacle, but if you make it through that hurdle, you're in for a nice time. This is a pleasantly enjoyable game, and I recommend it. This was Solo Board Gaming Night. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you guys have a great game night. Take care.
And knowing is half the battle.